Hello everyone, welcome back to Aurelia City in City Skylines. Today is finally the day when we 100% complete this view. We have just a couple of blocks to fill in that empty spot in the valley and some places to expand near the waterfront. It's going to be mostly residential as the entire area is mostly a high to medium density suburb of the city. But we can talk more about it during the time lapse, so let's go. Okay, so in the last video we built that park and surrounded it with all kinds of buildings. On the side, closer to that forested ridge, we built some messy looking high density blocks, and slightly further away from it, or closer to that underground transport hub, underground depot and the transport hub, we built some of those tall residential apartment blocks. So it all, formed a very nice looking neighborhood, kind of medium density, I suppose, maybe slightly higher than that. And we just detailed the places as well. We put lots of playgrounds here and there, mostly around those apartment buildings, and also built the big park with the paths through it and the interesting looking structure in the middle. So today we are going to continue filling these blocks. There's not much else to really say about this. So it's actually going to be mostly some quantity expansion, especially these kinds of blocks that I'm trying to prepare the infrastructure for closer to the ridge. That's kind of ending the valley. So those are also going to be some of those high density, just messy looking blocks made of various different structures that I maybe already placed somewhere in the city, or mostly I'm actually going to use something new. I'm going to use even some vanilla growable residential buildings, because especially the lower levels, because those are looking a bit bad, kind of dirty and stuff as well, which is exactly what this place kind of needs, really. All these kinds of blocks that they really need, because we do need to have these kinds of worse looking areas or worse looking blocks in order to have those nicer looking places, stand out. And that's exactly going to be the place that's on top of that ridge, the futuristic apartment buildings. Those are looking very good, but they're only going to look very good if there are some, slightly worse looking areas around it, so that it's just going to stand out a bit more. There is also that roundabout in here that we have built, I think, all the way back with that residential bridge episode, because it was clear that there is going to be some sort of an intersection here connecting that main road that cuts through this entire valley, and also those roads that are going into the tunnel, going into the waterfront, and also the highway that's going on the residential bridge. And various kinds of local infrastructure is also going to tie to the roundabout as well. So we are going to see that in just a minute as well. So this is exactly what I was talking about. I'm placing a lot of these actually vanilla buildings in here because they look perfectly fine for what I'm trying to achieve here. And it was actually going reasonably fast, this filling of this block. So in the last episode, when I was completing filling those blocks, I was kind of struggling with picking the right structures. But when I realized that I can actually use and should use the vanilla buildings as well, it was going a lot faster, because suddenly I had, a whole new palette of stuff to choose from. So that was kind of nice. But only those couple of blocks. Don't worry, I'm not really going to continue placing vanilla buildings in the city that much. So these particular blocks that I'm placing right here, these are like semi-detached buildings or something like that. Those I have already used, if you remember, a long time ago on the side of that big park on the opposite side of the river. And I was also placing them in very similar geometry. So again, I'm trying to use the same pattern, let's say, because I just want to have it look, similar, so that the city just follows, a certain style. Now, I'm kind of going to be jumping between different places around this area because I really wanted to just take a break from building those blocks and do something slightly different. So this is the place much closer to that depot area, if you remember. And it's basically between that second tram line and the cargo railroad. So that's not exactly a good place for some, low density residential development or something. So I decided to put this in here. I have no idea what it is in Aurelia. It might be some kind of generic warehouse structure, or maybe some kind of, I don't know, some light industry. Doesn't really matter. It's originally a building for some water treatment facility, but that's obviously not it. In here, it's going to be something different. But this block was just a nice opportunity, really, to just put some kind of very light industrial looking structures in this area. So it's not all residential or all, offices around the main road, so that we have some variety here and there, and a couple of detailing to kind of stress that point. So some cargo containers and obviously the dirty surfaces. There's also a fire station right there next to the railway tracks, so that's looking kind of nice. I really like that structure. I don't think I've placed it in the city just yet, even though I've had that building forever. I remember that I was placing it quite generously in the Rockdale city back in the day. We also have some finishing touches to do on the highways. So, for example, here we had that hole into the void underneath the map that needed filling, and all these kinds of little details that I'm probably not even showing here I'm also completing, because this is the last time we are going to be working in this area. So everything just needs to be 100% done. This particular block, I have to admit, I was not exactly all that super satisfied with, and I had really no idea what to place here. I finally decided to put really just some kind of residential buildings in here. These kinds of like detached apartment buildings, but they are mostly just random selection of stuff, really. Just put around some sort of a road. It might be some kind of a newer development. There's obviously that cargo railway, which is not exactly looking ideal next to these buildings, but there are going to be a lot of trees around it, so it's not really going to be that big of a deal. By the way, I totally did not comment on that little place right above the tunnel entrance for the railway. So that's going to be the station for the next cable car cable car line that we are going to do going up those hills, because there is going to be again some sort of like a tower building on top of the mountain where people can just go and just take a look at the entire city. So this was something that I really wanted to do right from the start. I eventually did the first cable car going on that hill next to the airport, but this was pretty much the original spot where I wanted to build it. So eventually we're gonna have two, and maybe even more as we progress further into the series, because we have a lot of mountains around the entire map. So doing some kinds of connections like that might be a good idea. If I didn't have the node controller mod, then this tram road in particular would have been really difficult to make looking good, because with the node controller you can now make intersections sloped, which is perfect for especially these kinds of roads with the tram tracks, because you really don't want to have the tram tracks go flat on the intersections, because it would kind of be a bit of a bumpy ride there. So it's much better to just make them sloped, and it's even more realistic. And again, just like we have been doing in the last episode, I am preparing for the first-person rides for these tram lines. So all of these places I'm hopefully going to, or I will not need to revisit them for the final preparations for the tram rides. So I'm already paying attention to some of these tiny details that will need to be completed before we can do that. So especially these kinds of intersection details, those are very, very important. So that's pretty much it for the rough building layout of this area. It was surprisingly easy to finish. I was kind of thinking that maybe what I'm doing in this episode I'm just going to include in the previous episode, but there are still some places that we need to finish on the waterfront itself and on the opposite side of that ridge. So there are still some more things to do. So just because we finished the valley doesn't mean that we are completely done. So I'm just filling the place with lots of green. This area closer to the ridge is not really going to be that super high density in terms of those big apartment buildings, but that's just forming a nice transition. So there's not much else to it. Anyway, this roundabout, like I said, we are going to see it once more because we need to finish it with the intersection markings. And this was, very straightforward thing to do. This was soon after the new version of intersection marking tool was released. So finally I have that option. I already had it, I think, with the previous episode, but now I'm finally properly using that copy-paste feature for these different nodes. It's kind of unfortunate that some of these connections into roundabout are made from different types of roads, so the copy-paste was not exactly working that well because, some of these roads are just different and I need to have those lines slightly different. So back to the cable car. So this is exactly where it's going to lead. It's not really going to be a very long line. It's just going to lead up this mountain and to another station, which is pretty much on the highest point of this entire, hill area, mountain landscaping stuff, right? So doing also some final adjustments to the sides of this hill, because I just roughly cut it, for the needs of especially the railway that's going right on the base of it. But it was clear that I will have to revisit it and do something better. I decided that this mountain is going to have a more interesting looking building. The one next to the airport was just a tower, just a viewing platform really, but this one might be maybe some sort of a hotel, something like that, some kind of a, I don't know, center, convention center maybe as well. Doesn't really matter, but it's just going to be a nicer looking structure because it's much closer to the city, and I think that this one actually provides much better view of the city compared to the tower near the airport. Just like with the tower at the airport, though, this one is also going to have just a road going up towards it for maybe some supply runs or just maintenance. It's not just going to be the cable car. And if you remember a couple of episodes back, I'm not exactly sure, I think 2 episodes back, we started building some of those hiking paths up into these hills. We started that kind of further away from this place, but those hiking paths are going to lead to this hotel building, I'm going to call it. And there are also going to be hiking paths just going away somewhere away from the city into these hills. I'm not really going to finish them. I'm just going to indicate that there is a possibility to just take a walk around these hills around the city. Okay. So as you can see, I was using the electric road tools to straighten or smoothen this path, and when it was smoothened, I was just doing some of these last landscaping adjustments to the hill. There are lots of these trees in here. I think these are still remnants of the original trees that are here from the start of the map. So I will have to kind of change them because I'm using slightly different techniques for doing trees. I'm not really doing these low density, bigger areas of just patches of trees, but I'm just going to do exactly the opposite. So slightly higher density, but smaller brushes, basically. So I will have to just revisit probably all the mountains around the map to kind of blend that together. But that's just a tiny detail. I'm pretty sure I'm not even going to show that here that much. Anyway, that is completely done. The valley is now completely 100% done. And we are now moving back towards the waterfront, right next to the residential bridge. So, if you remember, the residential bridge ends on the same level as the ridge with the forest and those futuristic-looking residential buildings. Now, underneath the bridge, on the first level, let's say, or on the middle level maybe, there is this light rail, wide avenue, and down all the way towards the river, we have this lowest level, which is basically just a waterfront level that's going to have all these different buildings right next to it. Now, if you remember that view from the start of the episode, we have had some places on the right of the screen that were completely empty. So I was actually, when building this place, I was looking at that view, that camera view. Obviously, I have it stored in the cinematic camera. And I was just trying to build all the way up to the edge of that view, right? So I would kind of be truthful to my words when I said that we are going to 100% finish that view. So these are just the blocks. I'm mostly skipping through it, by the way. These are just the blocks that we have already done underneath that residential bridge. So really just random mixes of different residential, commercial offices, buildings, even some even some industrial here and there inside of the blocks, just to really fill those places, just to not have the grass just showing through, to really push forward the idea that this is still like a very high density place. I'm inevitably going to tone it down with the density, because we are moving further and further away from the downtown, even on the waterfront. So I'm probably just going to end these high density areas with some park maybe, or some kind of a plaza. I'm thinking of maybe like probably a plaza with some intersection for the light rail. The light rail is most probably going to go off the main street again, because it's a light rail, right? It's not really a tram. It's not supposed to go on the main road all the way. But that's going to be well into the future, and this kind of leads me to the plans that I have for Aurelia going forward, like in very near future. So the next episode, by the way, mark that in your calendars, is I'm not actually sure when this or how this video is going to end up in the schedule. So maybe next week is actually going to be Altengrad. I don't know. I'm still trying to follow the 2 Aurelia, 1 Altengrad videos. So look at what's been the previous video. But anyway, next episode for Altengrad is going to be the bus ride. Okay, so that's going to be a line going from the cable car station, the first cable car station near the airport, all the way to that public transport hub on that underground public transport depot, right? And I'm actually going to make it go back to the original station so that the ride is slightly longer, because the line is a bit short. Anyway, that's going to be the next episode. Then we are going to, I haven't really decided, maybe then I'm going to do like an overview of this area together with all those before and after transitions. Like I said, I haven't really decided, but doesn't really matter. After that, then we are going to do some infrastructure. So that's going to be the intersection that we have seen on the Twitch streams. And then we're going to make a huge comeback into the downtown of the city. I already started building like a very nice looking project with lots of verticality, something we have been a bit missing in this suburb area. So that's going to be a really big comeback into that particular style. Okay, so really a lot of things to look forward to in the Aurelia series, because it's far from over. There are lots of ideas still to do, so let's just continue building it. Anyway, back to what we are doing in here. So this is the opposite side of that ridge, and I'm just placing these low density, well, not really low density, kind of smaller apartment buildings that I have already placed in that very similar looking area on that medium density residential hill, the one overlooking the airport pretty much. That's actually the hill that's the bus line is going to go through in that bus ride video, okay? So those are the same buildings, those are even the same looking roads. And in here I'm just trying to work with some geometry and fill this place, because this is going to be the very edge of that static view that we have seen in the beginning of the video, okay? I was not really trying to make it all look all that super fancy. So it's just the road and the buildings, and obviously later trees, but that's going to be it. I didn't really want to just bother with detailing in that area. It's just an expansion really. And it's kind of an indication how this place is going to go forward, because we have done the valley, that's kind of medium high density, I'm always saying that. But in here we are going to transition slowly towards very low density. Well, maybe not very low density, but just low density, okay? So this is like the first area that's kind of going to be following that style. For the past couple of months, I've been gathering from the workshop some low density buildings that I might be able to use here. So I have lots of different structures that I'm going to be able to do there, kind of futuristic. Anyway, the transition into, like I said, 100% completion of this view. So it's finally looking, very, very nice, how it's just all pieced together like we can see here. Anyway, I already mentioned the plans, so that's gonna be pretty clear what's going to happen in the next episodes of Aurelia. We are just going to continue building, continue overviewing the city, kind of riding through it on the buses, and just going forward. Really, nothing else really to say about it. So, the final cinematics. Just going to take a quick look over this area. I don't really need to be afraid of just having the camera angled towards the places that are not finished, because there are no not finished places. So that's kind of, you know, a relief that I don't need to really pay attention to that. I can just show the entire area without worrying about anything. I think it turned great. Turned out looking really good. We have those transitioning blocks that are really following the styles of what we did on the waterfront, and right past them we have those big apartment buildings that are just fitting this place. Looking really good. I'm really glad that we had the convergence of all the public transport lines in this area, so that we can have at least those two tram lines. We have the bus line going through the place. Now that I'm thinking of it, I kind of forgot to put some other bus lines go through this area. I was also thinking that maybe I'm going to do a couple of those tiny little Ollie bus lines, probably just shuttling around this ridge area, maybe connecting the residential bridge, the light rail stops maybe here and there, and the valley. So very short lines, just like we did in the downtown a couple of times, in the industrial zone also. So maybe I could have done that. I'm definitely going to revisit some of the elements in this area, because you guys even posted in the comments that I should do, for example, like slowly moving trams inside the depot, stuff like that. So maybe I'm going to do all of that for that overview episode, which is going to happen inevitably. I'm just not exactly sure when exactly. Anyway, guys, that is all. That's the end of the cinematics. Thank you for watching this Aurelia episode. Hope you liked it. If you did, then you can put a thumbs up underneath the video, share the video, and subscribe to the channel. And if you want to support the channel directly, you can become a channel member by clicking the join button below. Thanks again for watching. Take care and goodbye.